Okay, there we go. All right, I think we're all set now. So welcome everybody. Let me turn off these subtitles that Microsoft continues to turn on for me. I'm going to go through a lot of information today. Apologies if I don't have time for Q&A, but I'm happy to follow up. You can reach out to me on any social media platform at Kyle Ellicott, as you see on the slides. But I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about our decentralized future. I've been doing a lot of research in this space along with some investing and building as well, and really excited to show you kind of where this world of decentralization has not only come from, where we are today, but also where we're going and how fast this has changed and progressed in such a short amount of time as well. I'm also the co-founder of TOPIO Networks. So all of the things that you're going to see today, all of the data behind it, all of the companies, the investors, everything mentioned, you can go on TOPIO Networks. That's TOPIO networks.com and access all of it for free and more as well. And we see ourselves as a catalyst for the fourth industrial revolution. So whether it's decentralized or it's edge or artificial intelligence, we produce research and insights like this for many different industries around. So today we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, like I said, where we've come from in late 2018, all the way up to just recently, as a few days ago here in the early days of Q2 2020, and kind of how the blockchain landscape, but how the decentralized landscape has really evolved quickly, and talk about some of those, not just what's happened, but also where funding is going, what are some of the new emerging trends, where you can focus in new areas of opportunity, whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or a corporation looking to maybe acquire or partner or start working with some of these companies. And again, these slides will be available afterwards for everyone. Want to kick things off too with a great quote from Joey, the co-CIO over at Pantera Capital. In his most recent thesis at Pantera, one of the things that he mentioned, this quote, blockchain tech and cryptocurrency are the underpinnings of a new financial infrastructure, just as the internet was the underpinning of a new information infrastructure. Neither was nor will be built overnight. And this is very important. Most people see the technology or the trends that we're going to be talking about today as very mature, or in some cases lacking, that they haven't matured fast enough. And as we have to remember, technologies like this, and especially at an infrastructure level, take time. They don't happen overnight. And if anything, there's a lot of testing, there's a growth and waves of adoption, and a lot of lessons learned along the path before they are what we consider the internet today, and it's something that we couldn't live without at any time in our life. So when we're talking about blockchain and we're talking about distributed ledgers and everything that's in conjunction with it, remember that on your journey as you're looking through this. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about everything back from late 2018 to today. So since late 2018, I've been tracking and monitoring this industry that we consider blockchain. And what I've done is actually built a taxonomy or a landscape to map out what was happening in all of these industries. In that Q4 2018 timeframe, I had many people come to me and say, hey, what's happening here? What's happening there? In an industry that's changing every 30 seconds, something needed to exist. So I took the time and I researched over 1,200 different companies in Q4 of 2018 to produce the very first, so the upper left version of the landscape that you're going to see today. Started out with just over 380 companies that we're building at the infrastructure level of what we know is today as blockchain. And then through quarter by quarter, started to not only just see more companies, but also see trends. So in late 2018, we saw what I consider the foundation, the building blocks of this infrastructure. Moving into Q2, in early 2019, we saw the rise of enterprise. This is when more companies were starting to get, more corporations were starting to get involved, not just do tests or pilots, but actually starting to build product. And in some cases, building some of these layered solutions as well. And then in Q3, we saw this kind of turn where it wasn't just about one thing or another. Instead, infrastructure was starting to get mature. We started to see the rise of decentralized finance, which we'll talk a lot about today, and also this new emergence of the next version of applications called DApps, or decentralized applications. In Q4 2019, we saw an explosion, just a rapid explosion of many different categories and industries, a ton of companies, a ton of new funds, all ready to rock and roll in this new decade going into 2020 and beyond as well. In Q4, we saw a massive amount of capital ingestion. A lot of companies started raising double-digit investments, which is key when you see an industry that's emerging. So rather than small money, we see big money being deployed, and not just big money, but we also see acquisitions. So we had DApps and Infra, two major acquisitions that happened during just the last quarter of 2019. And what you'll notice is tons of activity happened from October to December, and not even including all the rest of the activity here that happened further into December and then into early 2019. So that last quarter of 2019 really saw a huge boost in activity, which just goes to show where we are today. Some of the trends that we were seeing last year, enterprise getting involved. There was talk of private versus permissioned, different chains and what was going to take over, why you should use one versus the other. We started seeing the infrastructure really mature as a collaborative stack of technology, and the term Web 3.0 being thrown around more often as something we were building towards versus just a term. Blockchain as a service started to come out. The idea of, we have cloud and you can deploy a cloud solution anywhere. Why not be able to do the same with other technologies like blockchain? And again, venture capital exploded throughout the markets at rapid paces. And so I want to introduce you to the Q1 edition of my blockchain landscape. And for you, and again, this high-res version is available for download for free, which I'll send out afterwards. This for you, think of this as your guide, as your navigating guide through this entire industry. So if you're looking to build, you're looking to add either new features, new products, new services, if you're looking to invest or you're looking to partner, this from beginning to end will give you a complete guide of where to start, where to meet in the middle, and where to end your journey throughout the blockchain landscape. And there's over 900 unique companies, funds, and ecosystem players represented in this. This has now come as a combination of researching over 3,500 companies globally to get to this point. And I'm very excited to say kind of where I've seen it go and where I've seen it come today. And we'll go into examples of each of these categories and zoom in a little bit. So no worries if you want to see more. As I've been tracking the companies in the space, I've also been tracking the capital and where capital is being deployed. And without a doubt, some common names come to light when it talks about leading investors. So we see Digital Currency Group, one of the first funds that was put together, DCG. Next was Pantera, Blockchain Capital, and Andreessen Horowitz, who just raised another fund in this space of over $500 million, and also Polychain Capital as the top 5
here for a second
investors.
and just ask, like, are you trying to map out the blockchain space, or are you trying to map out the investor money space?
So this is it's a great question. This is actually monitoring all the companies that I'm going to show you in the blockchain landscape. So this is blockchain, this is infrastructure, and just a little bit of crypto. I'm trying not to get into any kind of tokens or anything in the direct crypto space, if that makes sense.
Right. So like it's not like about the actual usefulness of blockchain, like rather than you're trying to map out like the usefulness of blockchain technologies, or you're trying to map out the money involved in blockchain technologies?
So all of it. This is just part of my research that I've been doing and noticed some trends that I wanted to share with you guys. But I'm going to get to where blockchain is being applied here in just a moment, if that helps answer your question.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, sorry. We only got 30 minutes, so I'm trying to get through a lot to give you guys quite a good range of information. So I'll jump through this a little faster, but I will say one thing, and why I bring this slide up is I notice a very cynical trend where every 3 years we see a little bit of a rise and a trough. So 2010 to 2013, you can see this kind of rise and fall in capital. And in 2014, we started at a bottom, come back up, 2016, all the way where we peak in late 2018 and come back down as well. So something to take apart if you are raising capital in this space. Also in this, I like to show the spread. This is not only just the top 5, but the top 14 investors in this space and how many investments they made. And you can see a good cross-pollination of where all of these investors have invested in similar companies. And already in Q1, we've seen over 30 major funding events happen. And here in Q2, we're already seeing on double digits action as well in terms of funding companies in this landscape, along with upcoming acquisitions. So without further ado, into the question that was just asked, let's talk a little bit about the landscape. We break it down into infrastructure, enterprise, and consumer. So infrastructure is all about the plumbing that is powering this industry. Enterprise is some of that as well, further focused on the enterprise. Consumer, all going to be focused on the end consumer as well. And in this part of the landscape, we see just under 800 companies that have created over 30,000 jobs globally and seen over $22 billion in total funding. And again, this is representative of those companies within the landscape. So those that I have researched, diligenced, and also set against a set of metrics to make sure that they do qualify as a company that can be listed in here. So at the infrastructure level, we see over 300 different companies. And so from left to right, starting on this side right here, you can see the first category, which is blockchains. This is how you read this section from left to right. So if you're looking for blockchains to begin building with, begin partnering with, start from the left, moving into DApps, decentralized applications. You can look at side chains, digital custody, all the way through to the specific types of blockchain. So permissioned or private, permissionless, public, whatever it may be at the infrastructure level, this is where you will find those categories. And what I noticed in this beginning of 2020 is that we had some new categories that started to have momentum. Sharding, staking, analytics, market intelligence. These were all new areas where we saw more than 5 companies start to peak out and starting to have movement in the landscape as a whole. On the enterprise side, so moving up to that upper right, there's over 230 companies that are building in the enterprise space. So this is anywhere from artificial intelligence to supply chain, one of the largest and probably the most referenced in the blockchain industry. This goes into connected cars, where we've begun seeing a lot of activity recently with announcements from Sony and their application into the mobility space. This also includes fintech as well, the Internet of Things, agriculture, advertising, where we've seen Kentucky Fried Chicken or KFC start to get involved looking at digital advertising and marketing spends and how they can track and monitor that through a blockchain technology as well. In the consumer space, I'm seeing over just around 268 unique companies with another big bulk of funding. So $8.5 billion worth of total funding. And here we saw the rise of lending and aggregators, thanks to the growth of decentralized finance and really the mass adoption that we've started to see in 2020. What you'll notice in this landscape and what's important here is banking and finance has continued to be something that has evolved from fintech, something that will continue to grow as decentralized finance starts to emerge. But from quarter to quarter, the way that this part of the landscape has changed is really that decentralized finance has started to take over as one of the largest categories. That devices and wallets has started to actually become segmented. That non-fungible tokens in gaming have started to see a rise dramatically thanks to a lot of involvement with top sports leagues and also gaming in general really starting to take off as the games themselves have become a little bit more user-friendly and a little bit more interactive as well. The second half of this, the landscape that I've broken down is around venture capital, accelerators, and consortiums. So if you're looking to get funding, you're looking to see what your competition is as a fund, or you're looking to start your company, maybe you're also a corporation looking for brain trust and kind of where to or who to work with, this is the area of research you should pay attention to, and also some of the people that you might want to start looking at. So we're seeing over 175 different venture funds that have invested in more than 3 different companies globally throughout this landscape here. Each and every one of these has a different thesis, and as I mentioned, Andreessen, one of the more notables, just raised a $515 million fund 2 days ago to start making bigger investments and bets in this space. We've also seen the rise of more asset management, now the introduction of fund to funds. So from the venture landscape, again, a dramatic explosion on capital being available, capital looking to be deployed if you're building a solution or raising a fund. On the consortium side, so for those who may not be familiar, these are great working groups where you can actually get involved that may be very sector specific. So someone like Moby, who's focused on the mobility sector, that you can work with to, again, share ideas, lessons learned, in general mind share on what's happening in the space to improve your products or to work together on products as well. And if you're nervous, tons of corporations are getting into this. I know FedEx and UPS and others are working together on initiatives in their own consortiums. This is a rising category, something to definitely dip your toes in if you're newly getting into this space. So how does this all play into the decentralized future and where we're going? So now that we've just seen that there's real companies building in this space and a lot of pieces that make up it, and a lot of capital going in to fund it, and a lot of corporations willing to start sharing, what does this all mean? And what does it look like for 2020? And this year in 2020, we have several different initiatives that have begun launching, further entering and emerging into our lives as consumers in so many ways we may have been unexpecting of. So we've started to see the launch of new apps, Voice, which is a new social network that was created by Block One, launched on February 14th. We have tons of infrastructure upgrades this year, which are not only being tested and challenged by us as consumers, but also on the enterprise level. The digital currency space is rocking and rolling already, where China has just recently begun testing their own digital currency. Facebook and Libra have been in the news about the idea of us having a globalized digital currency. There's the digital dollar that's being talked about right now here in the United States and many other countries around the world that are testing these digital currencies in the replacement of paper money as well. So this year in 2020, if you're looking at ways to where to pay attention, maybe things that have dramatically shifted and changed, look no further than decentralized finance. We saw over $1 billion get locked away in decentralized finance markets that either went to lending or staking or other rewards programs. Multiple products are continuing to launch and be tested in this category, which I'll get to. Even Coinbase, one of the longest standing companies in the industry, started opening up DeFi services for their customers as well. Insurance and lending, as I mentioned, is a big rising category in this space, and the idea of future of work. So how are we going to not only be able to lend capital, but also how are we going to protect that capital if and when something does happen, and when being the key word as it continues to break down some of these applications. Digital currencies, I've already mentioned, also layer 2. So that infrastructure layer, so things like Bitcoin Lightning Network or Ethereum's Radiant. These categories and these areas are going to be a big focus for 2020 as we're going to set a new foundation, a new floor for where this technology has to be starting at for it to grow even further. So as I mentioned, DeFi, huge category for 2020. It's changing, if anything, the way that we look at the future of work. And what I mean by that is how we get paid, how we handle invoices, how we transact, and also around the idea of how we actually store that capital and how we handle things like hiring of talent as well. And if you haven't followed, check out Ryan's Bankless newsletter. Puts great tutorials on a weekly basis around the future of work and the idea of bankless and how you can build your business around this as well. DApps for me, decentralized applications, I'm incredibly bullish on. I think that the way that the future of our applications, where we're looking at distributed storage, distributed compute, the idea of gaming, all of this is changing very rapidly right now, and we're starting to see a little bit of movement. If you look at DApps today, there's a ton of great metrics, but still not a lot of usage. That's changing very rapidly as more of the underlying technology is getting improved. We're improving the user experience, which has been a huge hurdle in a lot of these DApps taking off. Right now, decentralized finance and gaming are two areas where DApps thrive, but for them to go into mass adoption, we really need to see that user experience get improved and that easeability of onboarding get a little tighter as well. So to the question of where some of this technology is being applied, and I like to always show these headlines because I think it's a great indicator of where technology is being applied, who's applying it to, and some of the use cases out there. So just recently we had China announce more things than we can all wrap our minds around, but just to call out a few, their blockchain services network, or BSN, or also the China chain. This is China's internally developed blockchain network. This is a massive, massive rollout for not just China, but overall for the blockchain industry. This is an interoperable, which means it's a bridge between other blockchains, so information and applications can be shared amongst as well. They have companies and corporations internally within the country that are working on this to continue to integrate it further. They've been testing it for years, I think dating back as far as, I want to say 2014, 2015 on different aspects of this. And they just launched at the last week of April globally. So anyone can start building and developing on this new blockchain, and it's accessible in, I believe, 7 no, excuse me, I think 128 different countries around the world. A big step forward for the industry. And we'll see what happens and how they challenge the industry and other companies to have similar rollouts. And we'll also test the scalability of said chain as it comes out. Honeywell began tracking over $1 billion in parts from Boeing on the blockchain. We've talked about this from supply chain and seen this in many areas. Mercedes is doing this, Tesla is doing this, Dole is looking to do this, whether it's tracking the supply chain, it's tracking parts on inventory, or it's actually tracking assets globally from a movement level. Not only have we been talking about this, but now we're seeing this in real action with real money against it and real applications being applied, which is a significant improvement from the years past. Facebook, Libra has been talked about to death for the past year and a half since its release. Nonetheless, it has gotten redesigned. The way that it's doing collateral assets or collateral currency now has completely been redesigned from what it originally launched, hoping that they can roll that out at some point this year, TBD as to when. They've added some new members, including checkout.com just recently, and begun technical partnerships with Dapper Labs. Again, another situation here where a company makes a big announcement, starts building, starts testing, and then begins sharing. So for those of you that are looking, this is a use case of a digital currency and then even more there, and have begun sharing and getting more involved as well. Australia has rolled out a huge blockchain plan. So another country, you've got Toyota, who just opened up their blockchain lab, something they've kept internally and now have become very public on where they're developing along with Sony in the mobility and transportation space. We're starting to see payments take off rapidly. And not just that you can buy cryptocurrencies or digital currencies, but you can actually transact with them at real establishments, so brick and mortar establishments around the world. And also Ernst & Young, this is a good mention, Consensus and Microsoft came together to create a new protocol called Baseline, which is in partnership to focus solely on corporations or enterprises looking to build their own blockchain or to have a safe private blockchain to build on as well. If you're looking for other use cases or other areas to build in, DeFi, I can't mention enough. Layer 2, we need more hardened infrastructure, storage and compute. So I mentioned gaming. And we talked a little bit about custody, and we've talked a lot about the areas of the Internet of Things, mobility, and others. Storage and compute are going to be a huge part of our decentralized future and something that we need to see massive growth in and improvement on. Identity. There's an amazing talk happening today around the future of identity and how our identity or the know your customer process is going to be handled in a more decentralized way. Non-fungible tokens, I could talk to you about that and digital collectibles for days. I think it's a huge opportunity area as sports leagues, entertainment, music, you name it, is looking to get in the idea of taking physical to digital assets and making those tradable or in some kind of profit stance as well. The future of work, freelances, bridging. There's a lot of conversation right now, and especially in the past 2 weeks, around bridging and operability, whether that's bridging between chains, so going from Ethereum, for instance, to Bitcoin, or it's the actual tokens themselves and how those are being bridged together. So definitely recommend checking that out as well. And then lastly, I like to talk about the predictions of what I see coming and what's going to happen here in the year. I originally presented these same predictions in December of 2019, again in February, and I'm here to represent them because they haven't changed, to be honest. We're going to see more interoperability. It's not just an opportunity area, it's something that many companies are working on and putting atop of their roadmaps. We're going to see scalability improve. We're seeing this with the launch of new infrastructure projects. We're seeing this with the emergence of more decentralized finance or DApps coming to play. We're seeing more one-click or as-a-service deployments, whether it's around identity, applications, or integration and frameworks. China is going to take a massive lead, more than they already have in this industry. We've seen that relevant. Digital assets will really take off this year, not just digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, are going to be the talk of the year. And that hasn't changed since January 1st, as more and more countries are putting this atop of their economic policies. And decentralized apps, last thing I'll mention, it's coming. They're going to be improved. New business models will be introduced because of these, but it's going to take some time and some roadblocks need to be solved. And that's it. That's a little bit about our decentralized future, where we are, where we're going. I know you may have some specific questions, and I'm not sure if we're going to end here in about 15 seconds. I won't be able to answer them, but if I can't, reach out to me on social media, either through DM or whatever means, and I'll be happy to follow up and not only share this research, but answer any questions directly, including the one that was answered around use cases earlier. With that, I'm Kyle Ellicott. Please reach out at Kyle Ellicott anywhere on the web, or kyleellicott.com. Thank you.